Special thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video. While not as iconic as Bankai or as memorable as Resurrection, the Sternritter equivalent QUINCY VOLLSTÄNDIG became a staple spectacle of the Thousand-Year Blood War arc, an angelic trump card that heralded a massive power boost for the character involved. And, you know, I've always liked the holy form, even if I wish it had been given the same prominence that other so-called final forms had in the series before it. The portrayal and standing of the QUINCY VOLLSTÄNDIG is weirdly inconsistent throughout the arc, from the way it's used during fights to the actual design of the forms themselves. With both Bankai and Resurrection beforehand, their appearance was always a big deal. The spotlight was lavished upon them every single time, almost without fail. Even where the Fraction were concerned, they would almost always receive a full page spread or a double page spread for their transformation, signalling to the reader that this was a big moment and something to get truly excited about, often appearing as chapter cliffhangers. And that was especially true for the Espada, with even less popular and impactful Espada like Aranero and Zamari receiving full double-page spreads for their transformations. The simple truth is, it didn't matter who they were. The fact they were Espada meant they warranted some level of excitement, some level of hype and prestige. And because these character changes and designs were given such prestige every single time, they were always something to look forward to. There was also an element of welcome predictability to it too. You knew that every time an Arrancar fought someone, almost again without fail, there was that undercurrent of excitement about seeing their inevitable resurrection, and the same is true for Shinigami and their Zanpakuto as well, be that Shikai or Bankai. I personally just find the comparison to the Resurrection more prescient, as they were also the villains at the time. Meanwhile, with the VOLLSTÄNDIG, they are simply not used in the same capacity, despite ostensibly serving the exact same role. And yet, sometimes they are, lending to that feeling of overall inconsistency, and it almost doesn't seem to matter who the Sternritter is and what perceived importance they might have had. In today's video, I want to look at the inconsistencies surrounding the different Sternritter VOLLSTÄNDIG designs and why that might be. Why did they vary in appearance so much, and can they be categorized into different tiers, a hierarchy of holy forms to be exact? I think they can, and while I don't have any concrete answers, today's video is much more of a speculative back and forth discussion between you and I as we all try and theorize what's actually going on here. We are going to take a look at several possible answers for the differing designs of the QUINCY VOLLSTÄNDIG, as well as how their portrayal varied from that of transformations past. So, let's take a look. Before we look at the different styles of QUINCY VOLLSTÄNDIG, I think it's important to first look at how the mechanic is utilized differently by Kubo in comparison to specifically Resurrection before it, though like I said, Shikai and Bankai do work to some degree as well. Where almost every single Resurrection was thrust into the spotlight as generally the high point of whatever chapter it was revealed in, the same isn't really true of VOLLSTÄNDIG inexplicably, but actually, it was initially. Kirige OP is the first member of the Vandenreich to use VOLLSTÄNDIG, and Kubo unleashes it here in a way that feels very reminiscent to that of an Arrancar's Resurrection during the Arrancar arc. It gets a solid amount of build-up before receiving a full-page spread for its actual reveal, and is used as a cliffhanger moment in that fight before we briefly cut away, leaving readers to ruminate on its appearance. Basically, Kirige OP activating VOLLSTÄNDIG is a big pendulum swing moment for the battle, just as Resurrection always was beforehand. With the way Kubo is showcasing and bringing together this reveal, he's telling us, the reader, that the VOLLSTÄNDIG deserves just as much of your attention and respect as Resurrection did. Immediately though, There is a difference in how this form is revealed and how the Resurrection were that's perhaps not quite as noticeable. The way names are used in regards to Vollständig. Names are just another of the many aspects that make Vollständig feel ultimately less important and impactful than bankai or Resurrection. Remember, back in the Arrancar arc, when an Arrancar activated their Resurrection, we would always learn its name, generally speaking right then and there, with, I think, no exceptions. Even Nödt, Barragan's Fraction, who was never named in the source material, still managed to reveal the name of his Zanpakuto. Now, Kyrgyz Vollständig has a name, Piskiel, but unlike virtually every transformation prior in the series, he doesn't announce it upon activation. Now, we had no reason to believe these Quincy forms had names outside of established conventions in Bleach. Transformations generally have names in the series, and yet Uryu's Let's Steal never did, the only thing remotely close to a Vollständig to date in the story. So maybe they simply don't have them. Case closed, we can move on and never expect to hear a Vollständig name ever again. And yet, later on in the fight, only a few chapters later, Kyrgyz reveals the name of his Vollständig in a throwaway yet admittedly epic moment. And so now, again thanks to established Bleach conventions, naming a Vollständig is back on the table. Readers are programmed to expect all of these forms to have names. But therein lies the issue. Their depiction simply isn't consistent, and in the source material, roughly 50% of all revealed Vollständig were never given a name. After Kyrgyz, several other Sternritter are treated in this more traditional fashion. Naturally, each member of the Schutzstaffel to use Vollständig does so in a way that feels impactful and feels like the Resurrection reveals of old. Lil Barrow activates his Vollständig Ziliel and receives a full-page artwork spread announcing the form's name at the same time, and it's a reveal that acts as a cliffhanger. The same is true of Askin's Hashane too. Gerard's transformation isn't a cliffhanger, but it does receive a double-page spread and a name upon activation as well. So, as far as I'm concerned, that all tracks, that all makes sense. The strongest Sternritter should be given that level of prominence. But among the throngs of the lower-level Sternritter, things feel much more all over the place. Äs Nödt famously received a full-page artwork and reveals the name of his new form at the same time, while receiving a full-on transformation, the likes of which virtually no other Sternritter got, while other prominent Sternritter like Mask the Masculine don't even get a full page to depict their transformation. Bambietta gets a pretty spectacular, albeit broken up, ritual, but doesn't reveal the name of her Vollständig, while the rest of the Bambis feel extremely fragmented in how they showcase theirs in the source material. Something the anime has gone out of its way to rectify, unifying and improving the reveals and showcase of all of them. However, in the source material, some, like Candice, get a bit of prominence, while characters like Lil Toto and Meninas initially reveal their forms as little more than part of a collage, barely even noticeable among the masses. Perhaps the weirdest of all is Bazz-B, one of the most popular and prominent Sternritter, and yet his Vollständig is a complete non-starter, given no spotlight, no importance, nothing at all, thereby telling me that Sternritter popularity had no part to play in it whatsoever. It doesn't help as well that Bazz-B's Vollständig has one of the worst, most underwhelming designs, not just of all the holy forms, but pretty much of any transformation in Bleach. And that leads me nicely onto my next point, as we examine the different visual structure of each of these forms, identifying what appears to be a hierarchy among them, though the recipients of each tier don't seem to make much sense to me at all. There seems to be no common through line, and why these differences might occur. However, before we move on to that, first, a word from today's sponsor. So, as some of you know, I've just moved house, and part of the fun of the move has been trying to create the ultimate space for me to continue making videos in, from eventually painting the walls to getting some more furniture in here. And that's where the sponsor of today's video, FlexiSpot, comes in. Introducing the X7 dual motor recliner, one of FlexiSpot's most luxurious products. Now, this chair is seriously plush, and I've been very impressed with it so far. I'm admittedly not the most handy guy in the world, but assembling the chair was an absolute breeze. Featuring two separate motors within the chair itself, it gives you independent control of both the backrest and the footrest if you're really in the mood to relax, activated via these convenient built-in buttons on the side. The recliner is whisper quiet, and the genuine leather finish provides the chair with an enduring quality and of course makes maintaining it nice and easy, all while delivering a product that looks great in either a working or relaxing space. Now, FlexiSpot reached out to me because they are currently celebrating their 8th birthday with an incredible promotion throughout the month of August, where you can get up to 55% off select products as part of their birthday sale. And their tiered discount system means certain products are cheaper on certain days, with the possibility of even winning 99% off your order if you buy on a specific day of the month. Make sure to follow the links down in the description and the pinned comment below to take advantage of this sale, or if you're interested in the X7 specifically, there's a link to that there too. Thanks again to FlexiSpot for supporting the channel by sponsoring today's video. So then, back to the visual design of the Quincy Holy Form. And throughout the 1000-year Blood War arc, it becomes clear that there are, in my opinion, 3 different, distinct visual styles for the Quincy Vollständig, yet the causes of each are unclear. First of all, you have the most basic design of the Holy Form. This usually just consists of a halo, a pretty simple halo, and some fairly simplistic wings. The wings will still retain their own individual look, but they're all quite bland for the most part, made up of fairly simple shapes and sizes. Sternritter with Vollständig in this category in the source material include Bazz-B, Lil Toto, Meninus, Robert, Nanana, and Giselle. However, even among this first category, there are some characters that don't quite fit, or could in fact be here. Bambietta, for example, fits the bill. She does indeed only receive a pair of wings and a halo, yes, so theoretically she should be in this most basic of tiers. But the wings are used in a creative fashion to help facilitate her shrift, and the overall perception surrounding her transformation, thanks to how extensively it's used in her fight and the elaborate ritual building up to it, makes we the reader feel like naturally it should be given more consideration as opposed to those other Vollständig in this tier that are mostly used and thrown away. The same is true of Candice. While she only gains wings and a halo, her wings are again a creative implementation of her shrift. They're not just decoration. And in fact, Candice snapping off her lightning bolt wings to then throw them at her enemy is one of the coolest uses of Sternritter wings we ever see. Meanwhile, kind of on the flip side of this, Giselle's wings are certainly more elaborate than her contemporaries in this space, but there still isn't really anything going on. We then have the next tier on this hierarchy, what I would consider a partially complete transformation. These Vollständig fall very much into that space in the middle, and ironically are what I personally believe are the truest Vollständig in terms of appearance, because they most resemble Uryu's own Let Steel from earlier in the story. The physical forms of these Sternritter don't outwardly change much at all. They still receive wings and a halo like the most basic designs before them, but their wings are generally more elaborate, and they also receive additional accessories as a part of their holy form too. Sternritter with Vollständig in this category include Kirge, Askin, Gerard, and Pepe. All four of these Quincy have very unique wings, and overall just feel like they had a lot more work put into their transformations than most of the ones that come in the lowest tier. Kirige gains additional elements in this form, like his boots, his officer's saber, and his bandolier that wraps around his chest, while retaining his same base design underneath. Askin is again the same. He gains a visor over his face, flaming reishi pants, numerous bracelets, and a molecular polearm along with his highly stylized wings and halo, but again, he's still the same old Askin underneath. Pepe's wings are also very individual, and he technically changes a lot more than the most basic designs, though in reality he just loses most of his clothing. But he does gain an accessory in the form of unraveling his floating basket, turning it into his love rope ability. Gerard's wings are, weirdly, not a part of his Vollständig officially, I don't think, but he does gain a brand new helmet that covers his entire face, as well as strange markings running along his body. His sword and shield also gain a new design as well, but his actual physical form doesn't really change at all despite his impressive transformation. Again, Sternritter like Bambietta and Candice really feel very much like they are on the cusp, they are on the line, they feel like they could be a part of this tier, but they're just not quite there. Really, they are lacking the accessories as part of their Vollständig. Mask de Masculine is another interesting one. His wings are highly bespoke, taking on the form of a wrestler's cape, which is really awesome, but there's actually not much else going on. His different appearance that you see in Vollständig is actually a result of his earlier bulking up transformation, thanks to James, thanks to his shrift, not his release. It's almost like there should be another tier in between the most basic designs and the partially complete ones. A step up from those most basic forms, where at least a part of the design has been implemented in a truly creative way. And then of course the final tier is the complete transformation tier. As the name suggests, these Vollständig are more akin to the likes of the Arankar's Resurrection in that they fully transform their subject, sometimes rendering them almost unrecognisable. However, only two Sternritter received this honour, Leal and Äs Nödt. Leal having a Vollständig like this makes total sense to me. He is the first Sternritter to receive a shrift and is Yuharbak's godlike masterpiece. So when he activates his holy form, his body completely changes, and then of course continues to alter more and more as the battle stretches on. The Schutzstaffel are supposed to be angelic divine beings, so Leal becoming this seraphim monstrosity works. And yet, Äs Nödt seemingly gets a full transformation as part of his holy form Tartar 4 as just because Kubo thought it looked cool. As we can see from just reading Bleach itself, Kubo loves eldritch body horror, and clearly felt there was no better place to flex those muscles than with the fear, with the opportunity that kind of power presented him, but it doesn't really explain why Äs Nödt's transformation is so elaborate in comparison with his contemporaries. Honestly, I kind of wish Kubo had either made every single Vollständig the partially complete tier, while maybe making an exception for the Schutzstaffel, bumping up the basic designs while keeping it consistent throughout. And as we'll see later on, that does seem to be the general consensus, as that is kind of what's happening. So, what then are the potential reasons for the Vollständig all looking so different? While the likeliest answer, in my opinion, is that Kubo just created what he felt was the right form for the character in the moment, with no real overarching philosophy behind them, it's fun to speculate, and I've certainly had a few theories over the years myself, so let's take a look. The most obvious answer, the most predictable correlation, would be that it has something to do with the user's power, or the power of their shrift perhaps. It's clear that the individual Quincy Schrift has a heavy bearing on what form their Vollständisch will take, right down to the smallest details, such as Kierke's eyes being replaced with the bars of a jail cell, for example. And those are the kind of awesome small details that are completely missing from the most basic of designs. But immediately, this answer is kind of taken off the table when you look at who is in the most basic tier of Vollständisch. Very powerful Sternritter like Bazz-B and Lil Toto simply wouldn't have had such lame holy forms if strength were all that mattered. My prevailing theory for a long time was that the appearance of a Sternritter's Vollständisch was determined by a combination of two things. Their overall strength, yes, because I think that has to play a role somewhere, but also their loyalty to Yhwach. Yhwach plays an enormous part in these people's lives, and his very being is at the crux of their powers. So it made sense to me that their devotion to him would perhaps strengthen their ultimate form, just as Yhwach was also capable of ripping it away from them. But after looking at some examples, it's clear this doesn't really work either. Lil is one of the most powerful Sternritter in Yhwach's army, and also the most devout. So, going by my theory, that would work. That would maybe explain why he gets a totally different form. Two forms, in fact. But then Gerard is also extremely loyal to his king, he's monstrously strong, and yet doesn't have a complete transformation in the way Lil does. Gerard only takes on a wholly new appearance as a result of his Schrift reviving him later on, and more issues arise as we continue through some examples. Äs Nödt is of course completely and utterly loyal to Yhwach out of fear of him, but in terms of his overall strength, he is maybe a mid-tier Sternritter at best. In my theory, is that loyalty really enough to carry him to a full transformation? Is it really enough to grant him such a transformation? Although admittedly we have no idea what bearing the visual changes of a Vollständisch really have on their user's strength, if anything at all. Like Lil, Äs Nödt also has two different Vollständisch forms as well, but Äs Nödt is simply nowhere near as strong as Lil. Ultimately, my theory fell apart when I realised that, well, essentially every single Sternritter is completely and utterly loyal to Yhwach. In fact, of the Sternritter, Askin is the only one who isn't completely devoted to Yhwach as a person, as a figurehead, as an icon, while Lil Toto and Giselle only turn on him after he abandons them, where even some characters like Nanana still won't do so. Bazz-B is the weirdest one. It's pretty clear to me that he is loyal for much of the arc, as he throws himself at Yamamoto to defend Yhwach and is supposedly surprised by Yhwach stealing their powers, only for that naivete to be retconned later on during the Friend Saga, when we discover he has always hated and wanted to kill Yhwach for murdering his family and destroying his home. For a while, it was believed that there were indeed two versions of the Vollständisch, a true form and a smaller quick release form that could be leapt in and out of at high speeds. This is showcased by Robert Akutrone when he shoots out Kyoraku's eye. He says the name of his Vollständisch and activates it with none of the usual pomp and circumstance, using that incredible speed to take advantage of the confusion and land a hit. For a long time at the start of the arc, we thought that what we saw from Robert here, just the halo and the wings, was simply a result of him only partially activating his holy form, but later it was revealed to just be that, his holy form in its entirety. It seems likely then that while never explicitly stated, Robert being capable of this is in fact tied to his mystery Schrift, which we've mostly surmised by this point is to do with moving at insanely high speeds, so it seems that allows him to bypass the Vollständisch activation ritual as well. So truth be told, we really have No idea. Like I said at the start, while it is fun to speculate, it feels like Occam's razor tells us that Kubo just went with whatever idea he liked the most at the time, meaning that it seems like a lot of Sternritter lost out for some reason. It's possible that experience plays a part in the appearance of your Volstendish, but then Äs Nödt is a fairly new member of the Vandenreich, especially in comparison to someone like Kirige. Plus, it was mentioned that Candice has only just learned how to use Volstendish, yet hers feels much more detailed and thought out than the likes of Lil Toto, for example. There is one last thing to consider about this topic too, and that's the changes brought about by the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, as they are considerable. In the source material, the only Sternritter seen to use the Quincy power of Sklaverai was Kirige Opie, using it in conjunction with his Volstendish to absorb Ion and take the monstrous Chimera's power. However, in the anime, it has been confirmed that every single Sternritter can use Sklaverai to bolster their strength, and in fact, transform their Volstendish. Every single member of the Bambis, save for Bambietta herself, ironically, uses Sklaverai to take their basic Volstendish design and upgrade to the partially completed tier. They all receive improved wings, unique accessories, and new special moves as a result. And it's not just limited to the Bambis either. Robert does the same thing, using Sklaverai to boost the power of his holy form, taking it from a basic design to a partially complete one. And yet, other characters like Mask de Masculine and Äs Nödt simply don't do this. So, what does that mean for their already slightly more elaborate designs? Is this really the most basic version of Äs Nödt's Volstendish? Or is the implication that they are already using Sklaverai to empower themselves? But I'm not really sure, I don't think so. Another change in the anime features the Schutzstoffel. In the source material, when they are resurrected via the Alsvalen, they all feature prominent, fluffy, angelic wings that aren't connected to their Volstendish. However, in the anime, these wings have all been removed. Instead, the Schutzstoffel now seem to use a basic version of their holy form akin to the lowest tier in our hierarchy, featuring, you guessed it, just the wings and halo. Does this mean that when Lille eventually uses his holy form against Kyoraku, we'll see him use Sklaverai to achieve its true form? Or will the transformation just occur and we won't hear anything about these lesser forms seen in the anime so far? The same goes for Askin and Gerard as well. Pernida is much more of a wild card since its Volstendish is completely new to the anime. And so, does this mean that every single Sternritter starts out with a basic Volstendish but can presumably bypass it somehow? Ultimately, at the end of the day, Äs Nödt remains the biggest outlier to me. He's a mid-tier level Sternritter with a top-tier style transformation. And I can't help but think it's just because Kubo liked Äs Nödt and loved his design and the possibilities that came with it. That being said, I do wish the same love had been shown throughout the ranks of the Sternritter, and I wonder if the anime has any more surprises in store for us where this power is concerned. So, in conclusion, why do the Volstendish all look different? Well, I'm not sure. There are definitely a few ideas, and I still love the notion that it might be related to a Sternritter's overall loyalty, but it just feels like there are too many holes in that argument. As far as I'm concerned, the partially complete transformations, the likes of which Kirige and Askin have, still feel like the purest version of the Volstendish, the one truest to the original ideology, the one that's most akin to that which we've seen before in the Let's Steal, only better, which is what this is supposed to be after all. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Why the disparity in design where the Volstendish are concerned? Why the inconsistencies across the board, both in how they look and how they are used, especially in comparison to the transformations of old, which were a lot more uniform in their portrayal? Could the Vollständig have been a bigger deal had they been used in the same way as Resurrection? Would they have been more popular, more well-renowned, or would it have simply been too samey? Alright guys, but that's it for today's video. As always, I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you managed to take something of value away from it as well, though like I said, this was all just a bunch of speculative guesswork on my part. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below regarding what you think about the Sternritter Vollständig. How do you like it as a transformation in Bleach comparative to the other transformations we know and love? And how could it have been improved? Would it have been better were it more uniform across the board? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much, and I couldn't do it without you. If you love what I do here over on YouTube and you want to take that support from me another step further, thank you. By visiting the link in my description, you can visit my Patreon and help support me over there. For as little as $1 a month, you'll appear in the credits of every single video just like this one. And by supporting me at the $2 or higher level, you can get every single video I release absolutely free of baked-in YouTube ads. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.